Okay, so welcome again to the Explaining History podcast, and this is Trump's second state visit to Great Britain tribute podcast episode, or not, as you probably can tell from the irony-laden tone in my voice. It is, as we all know, hosting Trump in style with the royal family and the various other kind of trappings and accoutrements of state um, diplomatic visitation in 48 hours. And it's a kind of momentous low moment for Great Britain, really. And there are various reasons for stating this. One of the kind of overriding ambitions of any British government, any administration, Labour or Conservative, is to curry favour with an American president. It has been the kind of goal, particularly from Blair onwards. I mean, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan had a close kind of friendship and rapport. Though Thatcher, whilst she liked Reagan, I mean, she didn't have a lot of respect for him in many ways. She sort of didn't think he was very bright, and she certainly had issues over the invasion of Grenada, a member of the Commonwealth. And of the initial attempts during the Falklands War of the United States of America to sort of placate both sides. I mean, America became it was very much a helper of Britain during the conflict, but there were kind of America was also allied with the Argentinian junta at the time. So Thatcher was, of all the kind of the more recent sort of, and I say we're talking about the last 40 years, prime ministers of this notional special relationship, which, as I've said before many times, many times before, the special relationship exists in the imagination of Britain's political class and nowhere else. She was one of the kind of the more independent-minded prime ministers at that point. I mean, Britain has become observably weaker since then. And one of the chief causes of that weakening, in fact, is Tony Blair's sycophantic attempts at kind of currying favour with George W. Bush. So there is this obsession with cordial relations, not just cordial relations, but maintaining some kind of primacy in the imagination of incumbents of the White House. And and this isn't just Trump, Biden and Obama, whilst having some affection for Great Britain, didn't view Britain as a primary ally. We're sort of useful, particularly we were more useful when in the European Union. American presidents, when they wanted to know what was happening in Brussels, would ask a British prime minister. But the epic disaster of Brexit has resulted, actually paradoxically, in the situations that we are encountering at the moment, of a kind of enormous full vassalage to the United States of America. Keir Starmer came to power with the express intent of not relitigating Brexit, and probably, he was probably wise to do that. It would be an easy way for his enemies to consume the government in endless debates and controversies and sabotage. It is an avoidable trap. Instead, Starmer was keen on a US trade deal. I mean, obviously, a US trade deal would in no way make up for the loss of Brexit. And also, before Trump, the tariff regime on British goods into America was so low as to be kind of virtually, well, kind of negligible, really, in and reciprocal tariffs into the UK. It's harder for America to sell goods into the UK because of non-tariff barriers. Britain's uh, ideas around kind of food standards and animal welfare and things like that, and chlorinated chicken and hormone treated beef and that kind of stuff, and other other kind of non-tariff barriers to trade. Those are definitely issues that kind of Trump has always sought to tear down. But the other thing that Trump is very keen on is the full privatization of Britain's National Health Service, or at the very least, the ability for a American health service, American health companies, to compete for lucrative government contracts to supply services that are already being supplied to the British public anyway, except at a premium. Now, Britain, of course, is not alone in its anxiousness to display its vassalage. The assassination of far right podcaster Charlie Kirk in the US last week produced some kind of quite paradoxical, surreal almost results beyond America's borders. It's fair to say that probably very few people, except those who are kind of terminally online, had much knowledge of him or understanding of him. He's known in Britain in far right circles, but that's about it really. And in Europe, it's fair to assume that this is also the case. The European Parliament observed a minute's silence at his passing, not at the passing of some well-known Russian dissident or some world spiritual leader. And this isn't to malign or wish ill on anybody who's died, and people will have different views on him. I'm not really talking about what his viewpoints are. Kind of pretty repulsive, though I find them. Um, what I'm kind of observing here is that just the oddness of a European Parliament so desperate to appease the MAGA American right, so which hates the European Union anyway. I mean, the war in Ukraine is the obvious answer as to why this is, and knowing the kind of the whims of Donald Trump, who seemed to have remarkably kind of got over the terrible loss of Charlie Kirk very quickly. The unpredictable and kind of fickle nature of Trump, who is capable of making diplomatic decisions on a whim, is no doubt responsible for this kind of strange and but kind of self debasement, and this act of self debasement. Britain is in no way kind of different here. The British government made official statements um, kind of mourning almost. The Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper um, gave this sort of statement, which again is fairly unprecedented for a largely unknown podcaster of extreme right wing views from a foreign country. It's very very telling about the kind of the weak position that people like Keir Starmer and the rest of his government find themselves in, knowing that they have this character in the guise of Trump to deal with. But part of that weakness comes from the inability or the unwillingness to break with meaningfully with Brexit itself. the Labour Party, after the election last year, had already gambled on a transatlantic relationship, and knowing the kind of the
Pro savings days are back at Lowe's. My Lowe's Pro Rewards members save even more with limited time doorbuster deals. Save $5 on 24-count Contractor's Choice 42-gallon trash bags, now just $14.78. Plus, get your choice select DeWalt Elite Series saw blades for $9.98. Not a Pro Rewards member? Join for free today at Lowe's. Valid through 9/17. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. See Lowes.com/terms for details. Subject to change.
the possibility of a Trump government, which they had certainly borne in mind, because they had gone out to see Trump before he returned to office, because they were mindful of that being highly likely, seeing the way the polls were going last year. The new Labour government placed its kind of hopes on Trump, and in this they show spectacular naivety. They placed their hopes on Trump and being the government that was capable of pleasing him enough that he might look favorably upon them. And they, obviously understand next to nothing about Trump. The countries that seem to have fared far better recently are those which have faced Trump's tariffs down and forged bilateral relationships across the global south, and between countries like Canada. So the great mistake, and perhaps it's a mistake that the British government can't avoid making, is that they have to kind of hope that Trump will be reasonable. The reason for sort of treating him to the gold carriage treatment, which is something that they will no doubt do, and to kind of allow him to kind of further drag the name of the British royal family into the mud, is because they imagine that this will impress him. This will make him feel special. This will make him feel important, and this will predispose him to treating Britain well. Trump's not here for that. Trump is here because he is looking for a shakedown, because this is what Trump does. He is from his time as a kind of real estate huckster in the 1980s, spending spending time with people like the Gambino crime family, fancying himself as a mafia strongman, which I doubt he was a kind of ever taken seriously in that regard. Trump looks for victims, like all bullies do. He knows that China has shown him it is invulnerable largely to his economic and military threats. The Chinese have prepared, and they've done it very well. He looks to Russia and sees Putin as somebody to admire and emulate, and when he and because Putin has been largely single-minded on the subject of Ukraine, he's not going to give Trump an easy, simple handshake agreement with Ukraine to cease hostilities. Both sides have conflicting demands and wants and aren't going to stop fighting. And it's not going to give Trump the Nobel Peace Prize that he wants, which is going to be his legacy. Trump operates on that banal a level. So he knows he can't strong arm rivals. He knows he can't economically pressure rivals. And so he asks himself and the people around him and the CEOs who are now beating a path to his door with offerings, they all ask themselves, where do increased returns come from? They don't come from America, a country that has deindustrialized itself, that has financialized its population, that has pumped the country full of unsustainable debt, and where there are limited opportunities for huge returns. Um, the AI bubble probably about to burst, so there needs to be a source or sources of easy wins. And a weak country like Great Britain, which signals its weakness every day, which allowed an American citizen very, very close to the White House to broadcast a message to the British, to 100,000 British fascists in the capital on Sunday, demanding the overthrow of the government. For this, ordinarily, were it a different country, were it a China or India or Iran or Pakistan, um, were a different key figure. We're talking about Musk here. Were a different kind of key political and oligarchic figure, even one estranged now from the White House. Were any of those countries?
We quilt this city with a comfy roll.
Quilted Northern is quilted with 3 cushy layers for your comfort.
The quilted comfort of Quilted Northern.
Keep it quilted with Quilted Northern.
It would be a major diplomatic incident. But in Britain, the government has become so weakened and has become so incapable of managing the state and has become so incapable of managing international relations and diplomatic relations with other countries, and is so desperate for any kind of transitory, fleeting economic bump that it will suck up really a threat of insurrection. And was an enormous amount of money flowing across the Atlantic, right wing, far right, often evangelical money flowing across the Atlantic to make the fascist demonstration in London on Sunday a reality. So the problem that we have here is that Britain in the 21st century has found itself in a kind of a diplomatic cul-de-sac of its own making, or the making of its political classes. It has found itself, it has weakened itself, it's weakened the European Union as well, in a century that will be decided by the growing power of competing trading blocs in Southeast Asia, in South America, in North America, Africa possibly. And Britain has decided that it will try to retain some kind of, or retain the sort of role it saw for itself in the 19th century, playing rival powers off against one another. Well, at that point, it was one of the key rival powers of the world. It isn't now. So it has embarked on, from 2016 onwards, a series of kind of fantastical attempts at reinvention based on entirely magical thinking, and based on assumptions that were never remotely possible. And the consequences will be a diminishment in poverty. And the future that Britain faces is one where it is reliant on the goodwill of Donald Trump. Just consider that for a moment. Reliant on the goodwill of Donald Trump. And I think that for those on the extreme right in Britain, this is actually music to their ears, the kind of a country they want to see. the kind of economic model they want to see, the kind of endless culture wars they want to see, the kind of intrusion into domestic politics by people like Donald Trump or Elon Musk. That's something that they definitely want to see. And they view everything that is probably going to happen as opportunities not for a thriving social democracy to emerge, not for houses to be built or hospitals to be run effectively, though they probably do want these things, but for an opportunity to punish the kinds of people they don't like. And in this regard, the way in which Britain's far right and the way in which America's far right have been read and understood by elite classes, because this is really, I mean, people like Steve Bannon or Elon Musk, I'm pretty sure don't care one way or another about any of the kind of the mad conspiracy theories on the ground. What they care about is class rule. That's the key thing, always. And they have read astutely the crises that neoliberalism has gouged deep into Western societies. And Vladimir Putin understands that very clearly as well, about the kind of the dislocation and alienation and kind of meaningless ennui that is felt in Western societies so much that the conspiracy theories and hatred find fertile ground. There's the far right in Britain offers nothing kind of productive. It offers nothing in terms of a meaningful program other than throw out the foreigners that the whole country essentially needs in order to function, and everybody will have all the things that they've been going to, that they will now be denied, which isn't really a program for anything at all. Anyway, so Trump arrives in the midst of all of this, probably to record demonstrations and protests, and it will remain to be seen but the extent to which Starmer is humiliated by him. Keir Starmer is, after a year of being prime minister, already facing kind of multiple disasters. His a rash of scandals are miraculously appearing now in the press about him and his government. Scandals that everyone has known about for a very long time, but it's obviously been decided now across Fleet Street and the think tank world that Starmer has to go. So it might be that Trump is the kind of the catalyst of that. Anyway, let's see. I'll do more on this later in the week when the inevitable happens. Thanks very much, everybody. All the best. Bye-bye.
Across America, healthcare teams are managing complex demands. At Siemens Healthineers, we're here to help. With more than 17,000 U.S. team members, we're pioneering breakthroughs in medical imaging, therapy, and laboratory diagnostics, giving healthcare teams the tools to deliver smarter, faster, more precise care. Because when the right technology meets the right moment, diagnoses are clearer, treatments more effective, and lives can truly change. For us, it's more than innovation. It's a promise built for generations. Siemens Healthineers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Explaining History. This podcast is an independent production, and it's listener support that keeps these conversations going week after week. If you find value in the show and want to help cover the costs of research and production, please consider making a contribution. You can join our community on Patreon or make a one-off donation. Just follow the links in the show notes for this episode. Every bit of support is truly appreciated. Thanks again for listening.